This is Tiny and Leroy from Poor Magazine and Homefulness in Oakland. And I know we're all coming here from different backgrounds and intentions and spaces, and I think the hope is to talk about how do we leverage resources and networks to look at houselessness and housing in Chico.
So I am Black and disabled, teaching people how to think critically, more radically, more culturally, more historically about disability. No more charity, no more pity. It's coming from activism, from your minds to your hearts.
Anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum. Because my knowledge don't come from the institution. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar. That houseless mama, that houseless daughter. I'm a poverty scholar. All the people you don't want to see never want to be. Look away from me. What you gonna do, arrest me? We're in your city. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar, and I rock my jailhouse attire because me and my co-mama did the jail time for the poverty crime of being houseless in this occupied indigenous holler. I'm a poverty scholar, the melanin-challenged daughter of a strong, affable, equal mama for without whom there would be no me, a mama soltera and a welfare queen. Yeah, we're the Poets Project of Poor Magazine, everybody. Love you all. And,
Yeah, so Poor Magazine is more than a nonprofit. It's more than an organization. It's a movement, it's a family. So Poor Magazine started 21 years ago with Tiny and her mother B. And Poor Magazine is really a way of changing thinking around poverty. And really think that poor people had the answers, not politicians, not nonprofits. So Poor Magazine for 21 years have been teaching people with wealth to redistribute their wealth, to build what Tiny's gonna tell you about homelessness.
homefulness. Put that in your mouth. Homefulness. Homefulness is a homeless people's solution to homelessness. And it is possible. And it has nothing to do with the politrickster mess. So first of all, before we go on any further, if you are able, please touch this beautiful floor. Close your eyes for a second, because we need to say a prayer for the first victims of gentrification and removal in this Americlan stolen nation, the Maidu people of this land, who suffered that first form of removal that all of our folks are dealing with today. Oh, shit, thank you. When we come into spaces to this stolen land, wherever we go, as homeless, as multi-nation people, we always start by recognizing the First Peoples, because we can't have conversations about homelessness and criminalization and removal without understanding that it's actually a plan set up a long time ago. But there is nothing new under this particular occupied part of Mama Earth. And that's also the sad part, but that's also the part of activation. As the state, we have to activate. So as my brother Leroy said, you know, all of this that we're sharing with you today, a lot of you already have in your hearts. Big shout out to the work already being done here. That is beautiful. Big shout out to the poverty scholars and the liberators and the conscious folks and the conscious future reparators who are already refusing to continue to think the way that they've set up for folks to live in this society. So I just wanted to say that. We're going to read you a little bit of the introduction to the really powerful textbook that us poor people put out. Yeah, I did say textbook that us poor people put out. Just came out, fresh off the press, and it's called Poverty Scholarship. Poor people led theory, art, words, and tears across Mama Earth, and it just came out.
It's under poor press because a lot of academia press say no to it.
All of them.
So yeah, so we
Right.
put it out.
And it's important only because it's a template for our own solutions, and it's a concept of sharing this medicine that we're activating. So we'll start just a little bit of this.
So the notion of poverty scholarship was born in prisons, street corners, community centers, welfare offices, shelters, kitchen tables, assembly lines, tenements, projects, and ghettos.
All the places people don't look for educators, experts, leaders, researchers, lecturers, linguists, artists, creative thinkers, writers, and media producers. Us poverty scholars are the people usually silenced, incarcerated, criminalized, displaced, gentrified, as I say, disabled, marginalized, sorted, separated, and extinguished.
Facilitating reporting about what's going on in the streets by people who live there. Poetic autobiographies of struggle.
We are told our knowledge is not valid or legitimate. Our speech is improper, our work and our choice is criminal, and our words inept. Poverty scholar schools are everywhere. Our teachings are essential, haphazard, and immediate, fluid and static. We are your mama, your cousin, your elders, your corner store owner, and your recycler. So that's just a little bit from the book, and really again it's about sharing that space. We say Howard Zinn, Paulo Freire, make space on the bench, because this time the population is bringing popular education. So to go back a step and why we even came here, you know, in my particular story, and I'll just do a little bit of it, I actually wrote a book in honor of my mama's mamas, and my mama's mama's mama, and all line of poor, broken women who held on and continued by any means necessary. They call that resilience. I think that's a little overblown. I just say we put on our clothes and we keep it moving, because what else are we gonna do? But in the case of me and my mom was a unprotected child as a young person, which could be arguably one of the most dangerous things. She was put in extremely abusive, she called it torture, foster homes and boarding orphanages. And by the time she was 3, her body was molested over 210 times. How she stayed alive, I do not know. But I know that a lot of us folks deal with that kind of trauma ancestrally and currently. And sometimes we just keep it moving, right? In her case, she was fighting and trying to stay alive, got with my white dad because whiteness was considered rightness, as it always is in the stolen land. And by the time I was 12 and she had gotten a job off of welfare and off of welfare, as we call it, in all of these ways, she was fired, laid off for doing revolutionary social work. And for her it was one little, what she used to call one more little murder of the soul. And she couldn't keep on keeping on. So we ended up, that whole one paycheck away stuff, as we know is real, we ended up on the street, sleeping in our car, hoopties, wherever we could stay safe from coal lice or predators, whatever. At certain points our hoopty was towed, because that's what happens to poor people cars, and we ended up sleeping in doorways, bus benches, park benches, etc. But I don't have to tell any of y'all that know that it's an act of crime to be unhoused in this colonized land, right? So many times we were cited, multiple times, and when I was 18, I was put in jail and did 3 months in Santa Rita County, which is hard time, for the act of being houseless. And because we live in money bail states, you know, I didn't have the money to pay for those bails. So I don't wear the jail suit because orange is the new black or any of that thing that Hollywood, that crack that Hollywood will sell you, because it ain't. I do because I try to uninvisibilize other poor folks like me, because most of the time people perpetuate what I call the violent act of looking away. I can't deal with that problem, so I'm just going to keep it moving, right? And so there's so many mythologies about folks just because they might not have the access to the money to pay ground rent. And so one of the reasons that I walk in this way is to uninvisibilize my comrades who are still on the street, which I would be to this day, have it not been for my Poor Magazine family and village and what we're doing at Homefulness. That's my son, Tibu, and he and I were houseless again later in life when we were gentrified out of our apartment. We live in the Bay Area where there's a war on the poor. We were given a $700 rent increase overnight, and a space that I'd started with myself and other poor mamas, it's called Mama House, we were evicted and scattered to the wind. So these traumas continue, right? They're not over. They didn't start yesterday, and they didn't end tomorrow. But the issue is, right, how do we activate a different way? And I think that's why we're down here, to share some space and time with you. So the second thing I'd like to have people do is say a different kind of prayer. And again, if we could hold the floor, need the strength of Mama Earth. So this one is to unpack us all from the lie of capitalism, from the disease of capitalism. So any of y'all meditate or do any kind of things like that, you might know I don't do that. I can't sort of calm down long enough to, but I want to help you unpack that lie, because it's so entrenched in our DNA that everybody has a lot of lies about what those bloodstained colonizer paper dollars are supposed to mean and are supposed to be done with or activated, right? So just take a moment of silence to imagine forgetting everything you've ever been told about bloodstained dollars. That's a really big moment, but just try it. And as we do that, also a Mama Earth and an ancestor's prayer for all Black, brown, and indigenous peoples, poor peoples, peoples in struggle who've died on these streets because of those lies. Oh, thank you. So, after going back to personal story, because we have a saying at Poor Magazine, the revolution begins with I and then becomes we. Which means our story is a collective, a universal story of poor folks, of colonized folks everywhere. One of the things that we did is, when my mom and me were sleeping in our cars, sleeping in bus benches, one of the things we understood is that the isolation nation, the away nation, the cult of independence that normalcy is rooted in this society is so damaging, it is so violent, that it ends up leaving and destroying not only every poor person it gets, but specifically single parent families in a very serious and destructive and violent way. From the ways, the housing choices that we're forced to make, from the ways in which we end up without people to support us, from the ways that we're taught to leave the people and the places and the humans that love us, that birthed us, that made us. And I'm not talking about dangerous homes now, it's real, but I'm talking about a society that actually encourages you to step away, walk away, and be away from everything that is you, your cultura, your soul, because there's money to be made on that. There's a lot of money to be made on the away nation, as I call it. I know that this is a space of a university, Chico State. How many of y'all are in that school? How many of y'all are in that school? Came here for that? Some of you? There's this idea that you go to these schools and you get that paper and then you're okay, right? And actually what's oftentimes happening is you're getting into a whole lot of debt to learn a legitimized form of knowledge, right? To get a piece of paper saying that you are something. And in that process, there's a lot of lies as well. But one of the very important pieces is that when we were in that place of extreme desperation, my mom and me dreamed, and mostly my mom, dreamed of the very opposite of what we were living through, which was interdependence instead of the cult of independence. Something that actually brought us together with fellow poverty scholars rather than separate, which is really all that humans want, is connectivity oftentimes, and not all of us, but a lot of us. And there was no way that we could, we tried, and at that point we were in a struggle. And a whole series of things happened once I was put in jail. Fast forward through a lot of my story, I won't bore you with all of that. There's a book about that too, Criminal Poverty, Growing Up Homeless in America. But point being is that at that point, it was so hard that I almost ended up ending my life. And these aren't things I glamorize. I'm not doing this. Me and Leroy and all of us at POUR don't do this to make money on poverty. None of us get money. We don't pay ourselves to help ourselves, right? We're literally trying to activate a different way of life because we're in a state of emergency, literally and figuratively, everywhere. I don't have to tell you all here that. Not only with Mama Earth and the Mama Earth destruction, but with our own lives, because we're at the end of capitalism. That way can't be. So anyway, all of that to say, we had tried to survive through the ways and the channels that are there, and we were not surviving. And what had occurred at that point is that my mom, once I got in jail, did what a lot of us welfare queens, that's a small W capital Q, it's another theater project we do, but do, which is to find desperate resources. And she found a revolutionary attorney who actually busted me out of jail and converted my 2,700 hours of community service, which I ended up with outside of jail, into a writing assignment. So that was the first act of what we call revolutionary social work, or revolutionary love work. And later, a landlord didn't evict us the first time that we couldn't pay the rent, which was another act of revolution in this stolen land. And lastly is that my mom started to seek her consciousness and her culture back by sitting in on Black studies and women's studies. There's a whole group of things, and out of that we were able to conceptualize POUR magazine and Homefulness. And we started to collectivize with other poverty scholars, and it's a big, long story. But the point was, at that point, we started and tried to survive on grants. And, yeah, that didn't work. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, because we all know the nonprofit cycle is like, you know, what's the hottest project? So you have the project after project after project. Besides POUR, I used to do a nonprofit for disabled people of color. And me and Tiny Ray sat down and it's like, you know what? I'm sick of writing grants. This can't be the cycle of our life. So, POUR magazine decided to really go inward of our talents and of our skills and say, hey, you know, what can we do, you know, with our skills, you know, outside of the nonprofit cycle. So that's when POUR magazine did People School and started to teach about wealth forming, and yeah, you can take it away.
Yeah, and so and even so, it wasn't even so much about sick of writing grants. We didn't get any of those grants because we were too radical, and we refused to also report on our own people. So we were literally doing, you know, these media, poor people-led media, about the very systems that were supposedly supporting us. You know, it isn't just biting the hand, but it's like swallowing the hand and spitting it out. And suffice it to say, no, what I affectionately call philanthropimps and politricksters were going to be down with us. But more importantly, even at that point, because we started the first welfare to work, we tried to cap on that. The first welfare to work program for single parents coming off of welfare to learn journalism. We did all these really innovative, beautiful ideas, and we refused to report on mamas, single parents who got there, 15 minutes late. Because we know what it meant as fellow poverty scholars to be 15 minutes late. It's because you couldn't get childcare, you couldn't get your children together, you couldn't get out the house that quickly. And because of that refusal to report, they were not, continuing the little tiny grant trickle to us, among other things. But at the same time, we also tried to propose the notion of homefulness. And HUD and other programs at that point all basically said no. And actually we got, all these horrible stories and insane setups from the get-ups, like doing a grant application that's this big and having them end up giving us $15 a month for the concept of homeful. I mean, it was just crazy because they had no technical assistance and all these other things, right? Bottom line is that those funding streams weren't set up for poor people to even, unpack, right? So, all that to say, at that point we realized that the lie was that people with race and class and formal education privilege are protected and never spoken about. That the concept of wealth hoarding and resource stealing, and even by default, not that you're intentionally doing it, because again, we're all given those lies that we did that decolonizing prayer about, are never spoken about. That private property is never considered something to conversate about when we're talking about solving, if you will, the problem of houselessness, of land use. And that fact, actually, that wealth hoarders and land stealers and land occupiers, and I say this with love because, even though it doesn't sound like it, because again, we're all lied to about what it means to succeed in a capitalist system, right? If we have enough, we never know it, and then we need more. And we're told that all you need to do to make it in life is get yourself a small, house or this or that or the other. And actually, what you need is a lot more than that. And so that you have people accumulating Mama Earth, i.e. the real estate snaking industry, as though it was a commodity, right? And accumulating things, because things have been equated with love and a capitalist system, and protection and safety and all these other things. And then calling the state agents, like the police, if you feel threatened, who end up in the death of poor people, black and brown, and disabled people. So there's this so complex group of lies, right, that we're all taught that are rooted in the protection of private property, aka Mama Earth commodifying, over people, right? And so a lot of us poor folks are called hoarder clutterers. It's a really interesting thing to me. I was like, how is it not hoarding when you have 3 Jaguars, but when you have 300 pairs of socks or like a stack of papers and boxes, you're considered hoarder clutter? How is it not hoarding and cluttering to have a home in Chico as well as a home in New York and a home in the Bahamas, when you really only need one home to live in? How has that flip been so clearly, protected, right? And that hypocrisy, as I call it, where you have folks literally on the street when people have 3 places to live in. So anyway, as we unpack these lies, we started to realize that, we have to continue to smash on the state. Yeah, we have to force the city councils. I know you just had a change of city council members, and they're a little less criminalizing, and they're a little more real and human, and yay, I'm so glad about that. But while we smash on that state, right, and we smash on that system, we have to build and manifest something different, and we can. That they can be mutually happening at the same time. They can be concurrent. And so we
It's not intertwined.
exactly, and that because we're in this state of emergency, these people-led projects are that much more important and that much more serious. And that one of the things we all have to do is spiritually and legally take Mama Earth off the commodities market. Like punto final, period, right? And so once we can all sort of get closer to that, and it takes a long time, we can actually get closer to our collective liberation. So these might all sound like a bunch of hoo-ha ideas to you, but we're doing them right now. And I know that you all are on it, and that you're doing it right here. And so we were blessed to be invited by Marin and some other folks to come here and share this idea with y'all. And we want to get right down to brass tacks. One of the things we say is if you have access to bloodstained dollars and pots of it and places and people, right? Trust funds, CDs, whatever, start writing the checks and cut the mess. There's nothing more to talk about. On our way up here, we did what we call research. It's poor people-led research, not academia research, not a study, because no matter how many times you study us, it doesn't give us a home. They love to do that in universities. No matter how many times you put us in jail, no matter how many times you sweep us, it doesn't give us a home. But we did a little research on our way up, and one of the things that we learned is that there is I think 2 or 3 acres available for $52,000 in Chico. It can be purchased, and I say that and I drop right into that because we could talk a whole lot longer, and we will. And I know it takes a lot longer for people to kind of unpack their mess about this stuff. But I also cut to the chase because one of the things that happens is that people spend a whole lot of time thinking about, oh, is that strategic? Or maybe I should give it to them. Or maybe, and then they become into what I call poverty pimp paralysis, where nothing happens. And there's no more time in Chico. I don't have to tell you that.
You guys live here.
Yeah, you're living it. And y'all are activating some badass shit. So I just want to again shout out. I had heard about this fabulous sister and the work that you're doing. You have all the elements. You have what we call revolutionary love worker. What's that sister's name? Do we know that you've told us about? Who does it for free?
Oh, Lisa.
Yeah, there's some folks, and you have liberators, right? And conscious folks with race and class privilege. So basically, the medicine that we want to share with you is that you could already do a homefulness, and perhaps it's fear, inertia, or what I call confusion that may slow you down, but it doesn't need to, because now you've had the capitalist liberation prayer, so you're ready to go. You might think, what is Tiny talking about? So, what I want to let you guys know is, I'm going to just say these little things here really quick. Yeah. Where is it? Yeah, go ahead, please, jump in while I'm looking for
War
this.
magazine, before we got to the homefulness, we went through, like I said, we went through years and years of process, years and years of nonprofit, years and years of rethinking. So, like, we all know it doesn't happen overnight,
Exactly.
It takes what is 21 years in the making.
But it could happen overnight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what we like to say is that we've done the hard work for you all, and that's real as F. We have a template for how to help fellow poverty scholars and conscious folks with access to resources activate this now. And that's what we're here to share with you. And so I just want to drop some knowledge on you. You've got 6 acres in Chico that's 52,000. Boom. It's a lot. It's a an empty lot. And it's kind of not by, you don't want to get by. So the other really interesting things, and we're cutting right to the chase, by the way, with y'all. We don't usually get down this quick, but A, you're a state of emergency, and B, that you're already really on it here. We want to, and C, it's hard for us to get places, so we want you to use us to the extent that you can. And we'll come back, of course. We'll steward you through this process if you are interested. But one of the crucial parts is when we did this, because it is run so counter to what this society sets up, it wasn't the what we would just say, the rich white people who had a problem with us. It was the fellow poverty scholars and people of color and Ben Carson Lights, who, when we arrived in the poor people of color neighborhood, blighted neighborhood, called the police on us and said that we were the homeless crackheads. So I want to say that NIMBY shit is real too, but don't let it deter you. Because it doesn't ever mean you should stop. It just means you go harder. But it just also means, as my brother Moot says, because there's a lot of us in the Homefulness Village, you're only seeing literally 3 of us. There's like huge group of us. Warrior up, people, because this is a war on the poor. And we also have to activate with that kind of power back. So, that said, the one thing is you want to avoid, of course, gated communities, which apparently you have a lot of up here. That'll be like a whole thing. You don't want to go near them. But what the difference, I think, because it's also hearing from Marin a lot of the stuff that's happening. I heard that Walmart give you some money. I heard that you're manifesting rental help, all of that. So beautiful, sis, and everybody who's doing that work. The thing that we take it to the next level is purchasing, right? And when we purchase Mama Earth for Homefulness, we're spiritually and legally taking that small part of Mama Earth off the real estate snaking market. So it's a very important part of the whole thing. So we start working with the real estate snakes because you have to, right? That's the system that's in place. And then once we have quote unquote control, because nobody owns Mama Earth, once you have that piece of paper that somehow says you own something, it's a really beautifully interesting, frightening thing that starts to happen. You start to have autonomy from the very people who never want to see you. And it changes the power dynamic in such a powerful way. And then you start to realize, oh, that's why they left it and kept it and set it up that way. So that us poor folks would continually be begging and scared and kept and left and shut out and incarcerated, right? Because of pieces of paper and systems in place to save and protect those pieces of paper that this land was stolen on. So, we can say a lot more, but maybe we open it up for questions. This is a conversation. Y'all are doing it. We found 3 places that you guys could move on right away. They seem perfect. We also could help you create a team. It seems like you already have a contractor team working. You guys got some stuff going on. So thrilled and honored to be here. But we'd like to maybe hear back from you, because maybe you're all like, no way, Tiny is crazy.
Where are they?
Oh, great. I know somebody's ready to roll. Okay, so Q Sky Court, 6 acres.
So that's north.
Okay, and is that so far out of town that it would be hard to live in, be in, do in? You tell me what makes sense. Because sometimes you kind of have to go out a little
I
to
don't
get.
think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so. The nearest grocery store is not super close, but there's a corner gas station up near there, I think.
What's the
By
address?
Keys, I think, isn't that one?
What's the
Hi.
address?
Real estate snake is here.
Yeah.
What? Oh, snap! Love it. There's a real dealer. We already in business. Oh, yeah.
We're done now.
We in business. Okay.
Isn't that by Hughes Ski Hut? Or am I wrong?
What's the address?
What's that?
Oh, sorry. Q is in quiet.
I thought you said Hughes.
Or O. Is that O or is that O or Q? I think that's. Hey, but-
Oh,
That's a O.
Oh, sorry. O. Maybe it's a 0. 0 Sky Court, Chico, California. 6-acre lot. 52 G's. Then there's the funny. Yeah. Then there's the Honey Run one, which is Honey Run Road. 79,000. 15,000 or 15. Sorry, 15 acres.
The Sky Court is
it must be far out, you don't know, does it?
Well, and it's okay if it's far out, folks, because one of the things is honestly, and this is the hard part. So let me back up to say, because it brings up some issues of accessibility, and all of that. And those are very extremely important things. So thank you for bringing that up. One of the crucial parts about this is that we don't just talk about housing ever. So when we build homefulness, we're talking about an actually self-sustaining, village. So we're talking about micro business, we're talking about composting, farming, growing our own medicine, cleaning the land with mushroom. I mean, these are all things we could support you guys with too. We have folks who are doing that. I know you all already probably have. This is an agricultural school. I'm sure you got folk here, right? But I just want you to know we can also do a skill share on that piece too, right? But it's about building infrastructures on the space that support folks so that you don't necessarily have to constantly be relying on the external provisions, right? And you have to front load your process with that actually, because when you are dealing with fellow poverty scholars who are in really intense need, both medically and physically and medically fragile, that's a very serious issue. And that's what we are for. We're folks who are coming out of very serious trauma. Most of us are dealing with disabilities. A lot of us have young children. A lot of us are elders, right? There's a full range, And one of the hard parts is accessibility. And so what we did from the very beginning, before we even struck anything else, is we brought in garden boxes with all that bougie compost land that we resourced from infiltrated UC Berkeley Agriculture Department. You have to work with that's where you bring the whole scope of your resources in. I'm sure Davis, there's folks we could hit on there. And then we work with other organic farmers so that they're supplying vegetables and fruits and food on site, right? So you're working with your food providers, so you're actually bringing in food. We do a thing called Sliding Scale Cafe. And people basically, what we're doing is we feed the entire street, and it's all done through donated food. And it's not a food bank, moldy ass, old shit that most of the time us poor people get. It's the bougie shit, because we say to our resourced folks, what would you feed your children? For real. So why would you feed that crap to us? Right? So we get them to get us the organic hot dogs and the whole paycheck, and the bougie restaurants can, from Davis can do whatever. There's all kinds of ways we could do that. But also, it's about bringing folks in who have resources, who can cook, who can make food, whatever. So we're doing meals. We also started a liberation school. Kibu's one of the students. They make a newspaper. And why do we do that? Because when you're talking about poor folks, we're also talking about families in trauma. So another very important part, I'll just pass out the newspaper now. Everybody can have a copy. The youth asks $2 if you have it. It's a donation. But it's a poor mama and poor uncle led school. It's rooted in the model of the Black Panther liberation schools. Why? Because we don't ever call or engage with the people who test, arrest, and incarcerate us. We do not call 911. We do not equate that with safety. It usually ends in the death of poor folks. So what we do is we're not mandated reporters. We're not engaged with CPS. That doesn't mean we look the other way from abuse. What we do is we close in and hold closer our families in trauma. And so it's a lot of different teachings in all of that. It's also very hard for us poor people to galvanize and go through our struggles and not hurt each other. And so we do a whole series of different trauma support circles. And these are one of the things that we also would share with you guys. So there's a lot of layers to the template. It's not just, oh, we all got a tiny house, we're good. That's some BS, right? That's the mess. That's the mess that Paula Tricksters will sell you, right? Oh, you all good, you got a tiny house. No, that's a roof. You just put a roof on trauma right there, which is good because we didn't have a roof before. But that's the beginning, not the end.
In Earthquake City, you know, tiny houses don't really sound that safe.
And it's not to say, so then we talk about what would happen there. So for instance, if you guys actually purchased, you know, the Q lot or the Red Sky or one of these, there is a whole infrastructure that has to happen. It has to happen really quickly, but that's doable. You know, I think sometimes the whole interesting and beautiful thing about solidarity work, cross-race class solidarity work, is that you have folks who have those resources can work with folks who have no resources, right? And that can happen very quickly, actually. What is the crucial part and the slowing down part is important is the way that it's struck. So we root everything in prayer. And I don't mean secular prayer, because we all walk the Spirit differently, and some of us don't even believe in Spirit, and that is not what I'm saying. Don't walk out and say, oh, Tiny's religious. No, we honor the revolutionary known as Jesus, because they overturned tables of money changers. We right? Can I get a witness on that? We're not about, you got to pray to eat, or some other mess like that. And we all believe in Spirit in an every different way, and I often say the revolution will not be melted in a pot. So however we come to that honoring is what's important. But when we talk about prayer, we're talking about prayer of Mother Earth, of First Peoples, and of ancestors. And everybody is walking on this occupied land. So I don't care whether you believe in the moon or you believe in Mama Earth. You need to honor the people who came here before you. And so when we say that we need to root ourselves first in respect and how we can actually build and work together in mutual respect. And so we have a whole series of circles, and this is kind of some of the medicine we would share with you all in terms of the actual building of a homefulness here. So it's definitely not like, and it happens, right? And yet, it's and it happens. Because there's also an emergency, and then there's a long-term liberation move. So they can actually happen together. And then the other really big thing that we haven't gotten into, and that's another part of the teaching, is the way that you navigate what I call affectionately the settler colonizer permit industrial complex. That's okay, fam. We got all that knowledge too.
And we're still going through it.
And we're still going through it. But it doesn't mean you don't do it. It's just another learning curve. It's another thing, and we can do it. So don't be like, oh my God, that's gonna stop. No, it's just something else to put in your tool chest and get. So that's anything else, I don't know. How quickly are people ready to move? It sounds like we're ready to go. What kind of resources do you have? Real talk. No bullshit. What kind of money do you have access to? Anybody? And I'm not looking at any one person, and I'm not like asking you because I'm gonna take it. And we don't want your money. We just want to know: do you have access? Is it possible to get your hands on $52,000 or $79,000 quickly?
Or do you know people?
Yeah.
Do you have to have the whole amount, or can you just put a down payment on it?
Well, that's a real, beautiful question. There's a couple ways to do this. First of all, one of the crucial aspects of the liberating of Mama Earth is that you don't engage with the banksters. Now, you don't want their money, you don't want their paper, you don't want their debt, because that's how they take it away from us. So frankly, you could probably, maybe you could speak more on this, you could probably hold it for a little bit through escrow and some of that with some of the money, but you want to be able to, if at all possible, to pay that in full. Which is why you look for low amounts going in, like these two. There's also 119,000 one somewhere too. Those are amounts that you might be able to attain, get together, right? So going back to the homefulness model, there's some other, I'm just going to be throwing some bigger concepts out. Again, I can elaborate on these at other times to help you guys figure them out, but just to touch on them real quickly. So we have this whole process of the searching of the spaces, right? One of the things you don't want to do is get properties with housed people in them so that you can house under other houseless people. And that's, again, it's a HUD lie, right? So it's better to actually start with vacant lots. You also, what we found is we don't want to be taking part in the FUK closure, the foreclosure industry, right? So oftentimes what happens is you get houses that have been taken away from other poor people because of pieces of paper. So that's the same thing. But we taught folks with race and class privilege and a series of people schools. And by the way, me and Leroy and others could come back if you wanted to fill the room with some other folks who you think might have access to resources that need to hear what we're saying, but you guys can probably do it too. But one of the things is we knew that we had to pay cash and pay out front so that we could completely liberate and spiritually and legally take that small piece of Mama Earth off the snaking market, right? And so the space that we got was actually really similar. It was $79,000. So there you go. That's the magic number, fam. Maybe it's Honey Run Road. That's your future. But all that to say, they add some other fees, which you can probably say. But we were able to put a small amount to sort of save it through the process, and then after the escrow, I think you have to put the whole thing in. So that's kind of how it works. But your realtor can probably elucidate you a little better. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
And then after you own the land and you start the infrastructure, was a lot of that supported through people donating funds and like goods and volunteer, and like it was all kind of built up through that, or?
Well, there's all these different layers. Salud. There's all these different layers, and one of the things that we talked about is the nightmare of the permits, the Southern colonizer permits. We navigated that shit too, and we continue to, so don't let it scare you. It's totally just another learning curve. It's like gangsterism on the real. Like you pay an expediter fee to get in front of the line. Like, what? Like, that's sanctioned by the city? Yeah, like really. $400 expediter fee. What the F is that, right? Anyway, welcome to the real gangsters, right? The real criminals, the ones with suits. But that said, one of the things that you're just asking, so yes, the quote-unquote purchase of the land is just the beginning. And then there's a whole nother series of resources. So one of the things is in the permit navigation, is people who come from resources know people, right? Which is one of those unseen things that those of us ghetto scholars don't understand until we're in it. We're like, wow, how did you know that person? Oh, well, my dad went to Stanford with them. I was like, okay. And long story short, it's a powerful network of what we call our solidarity family, which would help you guys build down here. It's similar to the Zapatistas Comité Apoyo. So it's folks with resources who work shoulder to shoulder with folks who don't have resources. The leadership, though, the leadership for principles, ethics, and vision comes from the poverty scholars. The solidarity family is the folks who stand in solidarity. And please continue to understand one of the crucial parts of what solidarity really looks like and tastes like is that just because you have access to resources, it doesn't mean you know more than people who lived through this shit. It's a very important part,
And
right?
that's the teaching of Fort Magazine.
Exactly.
That's 21 years of doing the work.
Right.
So,
It's-
you know, all the researchers that come into homefulness and you know, cooking for the community, that's 21 years of doing our work. So people know us,
Exactly.
people trust us.
Exactly. Just like you have folks like that here. And so there's your leaders. You already have them. But one of the things that, to go back more clearly to answer your question is that solidarity family becomes a resource on financial and structural processes, right? So you guys have access to the beautiful, thick, rich, spaghetti-like composting earth because maybe somebody is in the agricultural department at Davis, right? Or you have access to knowing somebody in the permit department who knows somebody who knows somebody. Or you have access to the architects and the lawyers, or somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can then bring some folks together. So an extremely important part of this, and to answer again, to go back to your question, is these series of circles that we have, right? So we have, and that's how everything is done. Everything is done. It's not me or Leroy or Tibu or Motiago that alone make any decisions, but we do them in a series of circles. So for instance, our revolutionary building circle, where we sit with our pro bono architects who literally redistributed $30,000 worth of his time, because that's how much people who with a piece of paper saying they're an architect are paid. So that's the other thing, is we teach all the time. Because my brother Motiado, who's a trabajador from Michoacan and barely made it out of out of high school, is an architect too, right? But just because he has a piece of paper, doesn't have a piece of paper that says he's one, our other revolutionary solidarity architect can charge $25,000 for his time. And so what he did, and we love him, right, is he redistributed. He practiced what we call radical redistribution, hashtag radical redistribution, with his $25,000. Basically, that just meant hours and hours of his time making these beautiful plans for homefulness. Because, yeah, the politricksters and the permit mafia, that's what they need.
Yeah.
So there's a great example, right? Then a guy who came out of UC Berkeley, who himself was actually a poverty scholar, immigrant from Nigeria, also a famous football star. He's also an engineer. $30,000 to sign something. I mean, it's crazy. Basically, he did a series of plans. And all love to you, Joe and Bert. We love you, Joe. He did a series of plans that were worth $30,000 because that's how much the engineers are paid. If I made up a 5-page plan, I might be lucky enough to get $5. But anyway, Joe Egbert is a radical redistributor, right? Just like Bob Tice, our architect. Just like all the Solidarity family that sit with us and stand with us and do these navigations and infiltrations. And that's what we call them. They're infiltrations. Because they really are. Does that help sort of answer? Yeah.
Definitely, thank you.
In working with communities outside of the Bay, 'cause like Chico is a smaller town, I'm sure we have some sources and networks for that kind of radical distribution. We don't, as a community, we don't have a lot of like engineers from Stanford in Chico. So in other communities like Chico, have they pulled on their resources from the Bay, or I imagine people here have connections like
Yeah.
Portland, is that?
Oh yeah, we can totally, I mean, we'll be supporting you guys the whole way through. So we can put out to our networks, which are vast,
Yeah.
to other folks who can support you, for real.
So, about how much time will we have to like get money like this together?
Well, you know what, your revolutionary real estate, not Snake here, can tell you that things move really quickly. What's the market like here? Are people buying shit really quick because of the prices?
Catastrophic right now.
Huh?
The market is catastrophic right now.
Instantaneous.
I actually was right before this at my mom's house that my brothers and I are selling because she just passed away. And we got 5 offers, at least $50,000 over asking price in less than 24 hours.
That's insane. That's what I thought, because of the fire and the crisis and all that. So I would say move as quickly as you can.
What about land? Same thing with land?
Land is also going very fast, but you just have a little bit more of an
Yeah.
investigation to do at this point, because it may be that property on Honey Run, you won't be able to build on it for another couple of years, depending on how it was affected by the fire. Yeah. So it just takes a little more investigation. But also I have noticed, so they got into real estate doing community properties. They tend to, there are a few properties that are different than what you're talking about. This is like multi-families where there's a couple houses. So those are sitting longer because there's less people looking for a few houses to manage. They're looking for just a place for them and their family.